Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulphur Blade, and I've been sitting here wondering, well, I've been kind of wanting to do a CK2, Crusader Kings 2 Let's Play, but at the same time, I have a feeling that watching Crusader Kings 2 could be about as interesting as watching paint dry. It just might not be the best game to do a Let's Play on. Not a lot of interesting things. Of course, as a person who puts out content, I've come a long way since I first began. And when I first began making content, Crusader Kings 2 was, I think, the very first thing I tried to make content on because I wanted to teach people how to play the game. But of course, back in your younger days of doing anything, you're not as good as you get better in time, right? With me, I've just gotten better at talking, figuring out mic levels, getting OBS to work properly. Lots of little tricks that I've learned with time to actually, get my videos to come out in a halfway decent manner. And plus just the confidence of being able to sit here and talk to you guys without stuttering or mumbling or feeling self-confident about what I'm saying, stuff like that. Which I don't think I had too many issues in that regard, but I think I had a little bit of issues in that regard in the beginning, getting over that. Anyway, so instead of making a CK2 Let's Play, I thought I would actually do something more constructive about CK2, and that is to do a tier list for the CK2 DLCs. And the reason that I think that this could be more constructive is that there's still going to be a lot of people purchasing these DLCs in the ongoing future because, in my opinion, CK2 is still hands down the far better game than CK3. There's just so much more content, so much more polished, so much more there to enjoy. CK3 is kind of a blank slate in comparison. Plus, it's kind of dumbed down, watered down, made for the casual masses, if you will. But that's a different story. Anyway, let's stick to CK2 in this discussion. And let's start actually ranking the DLCs. We're going to start off with the worst of the worst. That's Sunset Invasion. Sunset Invasion, basically, it adds the very unrealistic Aztec invasion of Europe. Instead of Europeans invading the New World invades Europe. If you like a challenge, I suppose you could throw it on, but you can get the same type of challenge from Genghis Khan invading, which comes along with Horse Lords. More interesting, more historical. I would definitely recommend the Genghis Khan invasion of Europe. It's almost like in Stellaris, you know how you have a late game crisis? Well, you could think of the Aztecs as being a late game crisis, or you could also think of Genghis Khan as being a late game crisis. From my gameplay perspective, I far prefer Genghis Khan as my late game crisis than the Aztecs. If you had both of them on, well, you could have both crises actually happening simultaneously. You can get sandwiched between the Aztecs and Genghis Khan if you so choose to go that path. Personally, I don't. Sunset Invasion is the only DLC I think I leave off completely. It's the only DLC I just can't stomach. So, for that reason, it's in the F tier. Now, let's move on. How about Charlemagne? Charlemagne's tough for me. Charlemagne brings, in my opinion, hands down the best start date in the game. 769 start date is amazing. You have so many. The world is divided into smaller chunks. You have far more counts to start off with, to grow from one county into something bigger. You have far more kingdoms that are vying for control of areas. Like in England, you have Mercia, and you have Wessex, and you have East Anglia, and you have Northumbria, and it's before England became England. It's so good. It's so much nicer having the world so more divided. It makes shaping the world into your creation more enjoyable to start from the earliest possible start date when things are so much more broken down. For that reason, Charlemagne is huge for me. It also adds some interesting events if you like to play France. And I do like to play Catholic starts. And France has a large percentage of Catholic starts. No doubt about it, France is pretty much, well, not necessarily France, but the European area, Charlemagne's realm, is going to be made up of the kingdoms that we would think of as, how would we divide that? Aquitaine, which is part of France. So how about let's go with France proper and Germany and Italy. Yeah, so kind of divide up Germany, Italy, and France proper, and you have kind of the empire under Charlemagne, right? And that's the majority of your Catholic land mass, if you're not including England as being part of that. So from that perspective, it can add a lot to Catholic gameplay because those events are very broad and sweeping for the Catholic section of the game. Why do I bring it up from a Catholic gameplay perspective? Because your base game, your vanilla game, your Crusader Kings at its basic level is a feudal Catholic game. You need to add other DLCs to make it into something different, to make it pagan and Viking, or to make it Merchant Republic, or to make it horse lords, nomadic tribes. There's Sunnis, Muslim playthrough, different as well. So you have these different playthroughs, but you can't play as those in the base game, right? But if you get the DLCs, you can play as them. Well, if you start out your CK2 experience without any of the DLCs, you might be more concerned with which DLCs actually affect a Catholic playthrough. So I think I'm going to go through those DLCs first, so that you know what DLCs would have the most effect on a gameplay from a feudal Catholic perspective. So if you were just wanting to add DLCs that enhance the Catholic perspective, we'll start with those. So with that being said, I'm going to find Sons of Abraham. Where are you here? Right here. Sons of Abraham, I'm going to bring up. I'm going to throw it in the A tier as well. I'm biased, I suppose, because I very much enjoy Catholic playthroughs. I tend to play as a feudal Catholic more than any other type of playthrough, bar none. It's just the original experience is the experience I most enjoyed, and it's the experience I tended to stick with. I've played every other type. So I've done Merchant Republic, I've done Muslim, I've done Horse Lords, I've done I've done Viking. I've done it all, but at the end of the day, I think the Catholic gameplay is the most interesting. And Sons of Abraham is an interesting DLC in that if you didn't play CK2 the way I did, where I started CK2 when it was in its infancy, and as every DLC released, I added every DLC as they released, so I knew exactly what each DLC's changed my game because I played my game before I ever got the DLC, so I knew exactly what the DLCs added. Well, in today's day and age, when there's so many DLCs available for a game, and you end up buying like some of the DLCs in a package, or you watch a YouTube video like mine, and you're like, this guy says this, and this is good, so you get like 3 or 4 of them at once, and you just throw them into your game, maybe even before ever playing the game vanilla. And then you just have no idea what these DLCs are really doing. Well, Sons of Abraham is a hard one to nail down because it does so many little things. It throws in the College of Cardinals, which is a feature you may or may not ever actually realize is there, unless you're really concerned with it. Are you attempting to get your bishops elected as cardinals? Are you attempting to get your cardinal to become the next pope? And if you do, that could be a very powerful boon to you to have the pope in your back pocket, and he owes his rise to popedom on you. But you could easily miss that whole part of the game, even with the DLC active, because it's background mechanics that you have to actually look to take part in. The game doesn't kind of force you to take part in any of the Sons of Abraham stuff, but all of the Sons of Abraham stuff can enhance a Catholic playthrough and make it much more entertaining. It adds so much more complexity and dynamics. You can disinherit kids by making them priests or nuns. You get extra holy orders. The list goes on with Sons of Abraham. It's a very robust DLC that puts a lot into a Catholic gameplay that you don't really even realize it does, because it does all these little things, and it's kind of easy to miss all of those little things. But when you throw them together in a big package, you realize, wow, this DLC is really actually worth it, especially if you like to play as a Catholic. Okay. What's another good? Alright, some of you might argue with me on this one. I'm going to pull up Legacy of Rome. And I can already hear people saying, but that's not really a Catholic DLC. But I digress. I believe it is. And I'll explain to you why. I'm going to put it in B category. Okay, Legacy of Rome basically adds flavor and events around the Byzantine Empire. And the Byzantine Empire is actually an Orthodox Christian kingdom. It is not Catholic, per se. However, the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church are both considered Christian. The two sides are considered the other sides of the schism. Legacy of Rome adds a whole set of events about mending the schism. So as a Catholic, you can mend the schism. You can take those Orthodox heathens and bring them back into the fold and put the Catholic Church back together again. Or if you're playing as the Byzantines, you can do the reverse. You can take those damn Catholics and bring them back into the Orthodox fold and put it all back together again. So you have the whole mending the schism thing that definitely affects Catholic gameplay. Not to mention the Byzantine Empire is a huge empire that you're going to end up marrying into quite often. So this this is useful for a Catholic gameplay, but most importantly, the most important feature that Legacy of Rome brings is retinues. Retinues are very cool armies that are very powerful when utilized correctly. Retinues aren't necessarily a Catholic feature. They're a pretty general feature that affects all of the game, any kind. So there's various different retinues. Just about every country has different retinues that are kind of special towards them. Like England has longbowmen, and Wales has longbowmen. Italy has halberders. The Switzerland, the Swiss have the famous Lankerschnecks, or however you say it. I forget. But anyway, there's all these neat retinue armies that you can put together that are basically the king's army or the emperor's army. Beyond raising an army like you normally do in the game, this is like a professional army that is always raised. Retinues are really cool. They definitely enhance the game. They definitely add a lot of flavor to the combat. I strongly recommend retinues. They're very interesting. And for that reason alone, Legacy of Rome is worth the buy, in my opinion. Not to mention the mending of the schism and the other stuff I talked about. Okay, what's another one that's going to affect? Yes, Holy Fury. I like Holy Fury a lot. I'm going to put it in B. You could almost go up to A. Holy Fury is the last DLC that Paradox added into the game. It gave you legendary bloodlines, which those legendary bloodlines are famous people. Not necessarily Catholic people at that. You can have legendary bloodlines for, say, someone like Ragnar Lothbrok. Everyone knows of Ragnar Lothbrok. Well, he has a legendary bloodline in the game. Charlemagne obviously has a legendary bloodline in the game. You can create a character who's famous enough in the world that he earns his own legendary bloodline that's then transmitted on through his family. And this is a trait that's very desirable and very important that the rest of your family gets because they're descended from that particular legend. So that's a really cool feature that comes from Holy Fury, but not one of the only things that come from Holy Fury. Holy Fury has piety-related events. You can become a saint. You became such a pious character that you were included into sainthood. Holy Fury is just a really good, solid DLC that I recommend for anyone playing a Catholic playthrough. Bar none, really good DLC. Alright, another one that would be useful. Oh, we'll leave that one for the end. The end of the Catholic section. Let's go with... So these next ones are going to be more general. They can affect any type of playthrough. I'm going to go next with, how about, where's Reaper's Due? Oh, Reaper's Due. Where am I going to put you? I'm going to put you at C. Reaper's Due is basically everything and anything having to do with the plague, with the measles, with the mumps, with the dancing plague, with any type of strange illness that could transmit through your kingdoms and other kingdoms is going to be caused by Reaper's Dew. Reaper's Dew basically creates the need for hospitals. It creates the need for population control. The more population you have in an area, the more vermin, the more rats, the more chances for disease to prop up. So you need hospitals to offset that. So if you have a very populated area that's really booming and has a huge economy, one of its downfalls is that it's going to be much more it's going to have a much higher chance of some sort of horrible disease or plague or some sort of malady that starts in that province if you don't have adequate doctoring. Yeah, it's basically what it is. That is Reaper's Dew in a nutshell. Everything having to do with health and health-related events, the plague, etc. Putting it at C because it's kind of it's nice. It's nice content, but it's content that you don't need. I mean, it adds some extra difficulty to the game, but if it was to disappear tomorrow, I probably wouldn't feel that bad about it. I mean, it's interesting, but it's not revolutionary. It's solid, but it's not must have. It's just average, if you will. That's how I think of Reaper's Dew. All right. Next, monks and mystics. I kind of want this one to be between B and C. I'm going to have to pick a spot. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to order these by left to right. So the ones that are further left are higher up on the C category, or further left or higher up on the B category. If I had to put them in order. So monks and mystics, I prefer monks and mystics to Reaper's Dew. Monks and mystics are your secret societies, your devil worshippers, your there's just so much RPG involved in monks and mystics. It is so RPG heavy. I love it. The RPG portion of Crusader Kings 2 is the part that I most enjoy, and Monks and Mystics really enhances that itch, that part of the game. So I really like Monks and Mystics, but it's a general DLC. It will affect a Catholic gameplay, obviously, because those secret societies are definitely useful. No matter who you play as, be it a Catholic or not. So it's definitely a good DLC to have if you're playing as a Catholic, because all the stuff that's available in it is going to be available to you. Wondering if I want to put it up to B. Actually, I think I am. I'm gonna put it here at the end of B. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth. It's in the B category. It's fun. It was really enjoyable. I give it 2 thumbs up. All right. What else could possibly affect a Catholic gameplay, besides that one that I'm leaving for the end. Conclave. Conclave is going here in the D category. So Conclave is, I guess I would call it a general DLC. It affects every style of playthrough, because what it does to the game, it simply takes the game from being an apple and turns it into an orange. Where most DLCs add content, Conclave simply changes content. So before Conclave, you raised your children one way. After Conclave, you raised your children a different way. So you had to learn different ways of getting your kids to be the best kids they could be, of their tutelage. You had to learn new tricks to make your kids turn into super kids. But you still could make your kids turn into super kids. You just had to learn and figure out the new way of doing it. Same thing with the government portion of Conclave. You get a ruling council, right, in Conclave, where you can empower the council or disempower the council. It was designed, it was supposed to make the game harder. It didn't. It only just changed the way the game played. In a lot of the ways, you can abuse Conclave. You can utilize that council and those mechanics in Conclave to have an easier time keeping a very large, sprawling kingdom together. And the point of Conclave was to make it harder to manage a large, sprawling kingdom. But it didn't really do that. All it did was it changed the way you managed the large, sprawling kingdom. It just made you have to learn a new meta. That's ultimately what Conclave does. It makes you learn a new meta of the game. So it changes content in the game from an apple into an orange. That's why I put it at D. It was the first, well, not the first. Sunset Invasion was the first DLC that came out that I hated, that I wouldn't play. Conclave is the next DLC that ever came out that I hated. I have softened towards it through the years. At this point, I'm kind of ambivalent about Conclave. Most of the games I play, Conclave is enabled. But at the same time, I could turn it off and go back to the nostalgia of how the game played before Conclave and be just as excited to do that. Conclave, I don't think really enhances the game. I just think it changes the game. Okay, and the final one I've been waiting on for Catholic gameplay, for any gameplay, for all of this is the God. This is the God DLC. This is the God tier DLC, if you will. This is the #1 DLC in all of Crusader Kings, and that's Way of Life. Way of Life is your absolute most amazing RPG adding DLC. It's one of the least expensive DLCs that just gives you the most bang for the buck. If there is a DLC that I could consider as required, as a must-buy, it's Way of Life, bar none. Nothing stacks up to Way of Life. Way of Life is just... it's just fun. It adds so much character building. Half of your game in CK2, I think, is the creation of your character. Is training your character into becoming somebody amazing. And without Way of Life, you can still train your character, but with Way of Life, the training of your character is so good. You can get very focused in how you want to train your character with Way of Life, or you can get very general and make your character a jack of all trades by changing the focuses every 5 to 10 years, or however often you want to change the focuses that you're focusing on. Way of Life is just, I can't say it enough, it's the best DLC. Hands down. Easy bar none, best DLC. Alright, so the remainder of the DLCs. Well, all right, let's next go with Jade Dragon, because Jade Dragon doesn't quite fit exactly what I'm about to place all the other DLCs into. Jade Dragon is more of a generalized DLC that can affect any playthrough, but it's going to affect playthroughs that exist on one side of the map far more often than playthroughs that exist on the other side of the map. So Catholics, for instance, being way over in France and England, are a long way from China. And so the Jade Dragon stuff really is less relevant to Catholic playthroughs. But Horse Lords, the Rajas of India, the guys that play in India, the guys that are playing in the Steplands, Horse Lords has a bigger effect on them. So it's kind of a general DLC that has a bigger effect on the western side of the map. And really, generally, I don't play as those guys very often. Horse Lords I find more interesting than Rajas of India, that's for sure. But either way, yeah, just this is one I could go without. I mean, it's nice to have. I don't see a need to turn it off. Since I own it, I turned it on. It enhances the game, but I'm going to put it on this side of Conclave. Because, yeah, Conclave is just that bad, if you will. So Jade Dragon is kind of like the next step up from Conclave. It's the DLC that I have turned on that if any DLC wasn't active, it would be that one, and I wouldn't even notice it. It doesn't really enhance my gameplays. But then I don't play as the Horse Lords or Rajas of India very often. All right, so we got Jade Dragon out of the way. Now this next lot of DLCs, they drastically changed the game. They changed it from being a Catholic gameplay into a not Catholic gameplay. They very much changed the basic mechanics of the game into something different. No longer Catholic feudal, but something different. These DLCs are not needed for a Catholic gameplay. These DLCs do little to nothing if you just like to play a Catholic gameplay. But if you're wanting to be a Viking, or you're wanting to be a Merchant Republic, or you're wanting to play as the Muslims, then these DLCs are the ones you're looking for. Now, of these different flavors, I'm going to say that the Old Gods, playing as a Viking, is the most interesting. Playing as pagans, I should say. The Old Gods is more than just Vikings. It's all kinds of pagans beyond Vikings. It definitely is the most interesting way to play as not a Catholic. So for that, I'm going to put it up here in the A tier, because it also brings another start date as well. something or another. 821, 824, 800 and something start date for the Old Gods DLC. Again, that doesn't affect me very much because pretty much every game I ever play is in the 769 start date with Charlemagne. So that start date is neither here nor there. But every now and then I like to play as a Viking. Every now and then I like to go raiding. Every now and then I like to be tribal and change it up. So Old Gods is good for that. Probably the funnest non-Catholic style game you can play is Old Gods. Old Gods, I feel, is very, very well done. So I'm going to put it up here in the A category. I'm going to take Rajas, as I think this is the least interesting alternate style of play. It's probably just my bias of not being interested in the Indian area at all. But it's done nothing for me. I own it. It's active in my games. No reason to turn it off. But it really, I've gotten very little out of this DLC. I've played in India a couple of times. I don't find it interesting. So it's down here. Reaper's Dew definitely enhances my game more than Raja's does. Honestly, actually, while I'm thinking of it, I think Jade Dragon might enhance my game, my personal game, more than Raja's does. However, at the same time, I think Raja's is probably a better DLC than Jade Dragon. If I'm looking at it objectively, from the viewpoint of other people being interested in Rajas of India. I think Rajas of India has more potential to be interesting for somebody out there, and thus deserves to be higher up on the list. Yes, that's why I'm putting it where I am, because of its potential to be interesting to other people who want to play in India. Yeah, we'll go with that. All right. We're getting into the harder territory here. Swords of Islam is your Muslim playthrough. Other than the Old Gods, I feel Swords of Islam is probably the most polished alternate form of play. Playing as the bad guys, as the Sunnis, or the Shia, as the Muslims, which is kind of like the opposite of playing as the Christians, as the Catholics. It can be interesting. It's a nice change of pace. I've played quite a few Muslim playthroughs. I've gotten my money's worth out of this DLC, no doubt about it. I just find the Viking playthrough more interesting than the Muslim playthrough, and of course I find the Catholic playthrough the best. But as playthroughs go, I like the Muslim playthrough probably more than playing in India, easily more than playing in India. And I feel it's the best, it's the most polished of the alternate styles other than Old Gods. So that's where I'm going to put it in B category, right where it is. I think it fits there just right. Horse Lords. Oh, Horse Lords, you're a hard one for me. I'm gonna put you up here in B. So Horse Lords, Horse Lords actually really does a lot that you have to give it credit for. It spawns adventurers. Adventurers are, well, for some of you, you might consider them annoying, but they're guys that put armies together that show up one day and try to wreak havoc on your shoreline and have some sort of claim. They're adventurers. They're a fun extra spice to the game. That's because of Horse Lords and the adventures that come from Horse Lords. There's a lot of dynamics in Horse Lords that actually affect the rest of the gameplay. Like, for example, Genghis Khan showing up and crushing Europe. That's because of Horse Lords. And I think Horse Lords is a very strong DLC for the additional stuff it does beyond letting you play as a nomad. If you are an aggressive style player, you like to map paint, if you're a person that likes to map paint, Horse Lords is going to be a very fun style of game for you to try. It'll also be a little frustrating too, because Horse Lords, you can paint the map quite well, and at the same time your map can fall apart into different colors pretty easily too, because of how the Horse Lord system is implemented. Let's just say that Gavelkind at times is more stable than how Horse Lords does their passing of titles, if you will. So Horse Lords can be an easy way to put stuff together, and at the same time Horse Lords can be an easy way to rip everything apart. But it's a fun DLC, I enjoy it, and I think it deserves to be exactly where it is on the list. A lot of people don't like Horse Lords. You're going to find Horse Lords is one of those DLCs that people are really for or really against. Conclave is the other one that has a very, you either like it or you don't. Conclave by far is the most you either like it or you don't. Horse Lords, a bit less. I think probably more people like it than hate it. That's my opinion. And then finally, the Merchant Republics. I'm gonna stick this here at the top of the C category. Merchant Republics are kind of, well, they're definitely different. They're kind of half-baked. They can be really op. They can be very overpowered if you know how to use them. In fact, they can be too overpowered if you know how to use them. I think Merchant Republic is a very interesting way to play. But when you get good at playing it, you discover how overpowered it is, and you lose interest in playing the Merchant Republic because of how op it is. I think that's the simplest way to put it. Merchant Republic is a nice change of pace, but they're really op. They're not well balanced in the hands of the player. You'll have Merchant Republics that spawn in your game when you're not playing as a Merchant Republic. When you're just playing as a normal Catholic, you'll have Venice in the game and other Merchant Republics. And they're great in that manner because the computer's playing them. And the computer doesn't know how to, well, turn them up. Where a player can really abuse the Merchant Republics. But I'm going to put it at the top of C category because I feel that it's, I don't know, just deserves to be there. No better reasoning than that. And I think that is my guide to the DLCs inside of Crusader Kings 2. Now you can take my guide with a grain of salt, because as I've said multiple times, I enjoy the Catholic gameplay far and most in the game. There are a lot of other people that really love Viking gameplay. And to each their own. I have no problem with people loving to play the Vikings. Old Gods, here, where it is, I still have it in the A category. I recognize it as being a good DLC. Others would put it here next to Way of Life. Others consider Old Gods to be S tier. I don't. I think Way of Life is the only S tier DLC in my opinion. But other people, Old Gods has a huge following. Know that. Know that Old Gods has a lot of respect in the Crusader Kings 2 community. It's a very loved DLC. I have it way up in A tier. I think I'm doing it due justice. But for you, it might be higher up the list. Why might you be watching me do this video? Because you might be trying to create an informed opinion. You might be listening to me ramble on so you can figure out what you're gonna buy of the CK2 DLCs. And that's why I'm doing this. I want you to go into the purchase of your DLCs as well informed as you can be from a person with over 4,000 bloody fucking hours in Crusader Kings 2. I've played this game probably more than any other game I've ever played in my life, other than maybe Ultima Online. And Ultima Online was just my favorite MMORPG of all time that I played day in and day out for years. CK2, I've put so many hours into it because the MMORPG community, or not community, but genre just went so downhill and off the cliff. But that's a different story. CK2 is a loved game for me. I've got a massive amount of hours in it. And hopefully my knowledge of CK2, from my obviously biased standpoint. Jade Dragon is lower on the list because I don't play in that region of the map. It might be higher on the list if you are more interested in things that are happening in the western side of the map. Know that. I want you armed with the knowledge that Jade Dragon might be higher up this list for you. And why is it on this list for me where it's at? Because it just isn't that interesting. Rajas of India might be higher up in the list for you. If you're interested in the Indian subcontinent, that could go higher. If you're interested in Muslim play, Swords of Islam could certainly go higher. If you're interested in being Genghis Khan and conquering the map, then Horse Lords might be your ticket. I mean, so these last 5 DLCs that change how the game is played, to be Viking, to be Horse Lord, to be Muslim, to be Rajas of India, to be the Republic, Merchant Republic, they alter the core gameplay. And that might be something that is really appealing to you. You'll know that. You'll understand that. And those are going to be more important on the list for you. Yeah. Anyway, I think I've nailed this list. I'm very happy and content putting this list out for you guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If so, smash the like button, consider subscribing, and until next time all, peace.